Hey, I'm Clayco, and I help people with existentially troubling stuff. In this video, I'll talk about the existential nightmare that it can feel like of being born in a world that has not asked you to be born. I will explicitly talk about extremely gruesome acts of humanity and existentially very uncomfortable and troubling things. So please be warned. The point will be to acknowledge reality for how it is and not for what we want it to be like, and then find acceptance underneath. But this acceptance often requires a lot of psychological and spiritual work for which some are not ready for, so please be cautious. When I was younger, the most scary thing about existence for me was the fact that it felt forced upon me, or it's the realization that it literally is forced upon you. I didn't ask to be born. As far as we know, nobody does. So whatever this existence was like felt like a violation. And all my life, when I was looking for the nature of reality or the ultimate truth, it was really about finding a way to make this violation okay, to accept somehow, which in of itself seemed kind of illogical, because how are you supposed to accept being abused and then having to accept said abuse? Just that in this framework, it's reality that is just abusing everyone and nobody has signed up for it. So in that sense, it was almost about trying to make the universe look good, when what it was somehow doing is just discovering its endless potential for evil. A lot of spirituality is just trying to suppress this evil and acting as if it's not there, or as if you can somehow disassociate from consciousness or whatever. I found it horrifying to realize to which extent we literally don't control anything. Not who we are and what time we are born in, especially not what time we're born in or the context of our society. Time is something that I used to think a lot about because it implies so much about what you experience on a day-to-day basis. I remember studying history in school and seeing the sheer amount of atrocities that we've done to each other. I remember our history teacher often going into very gruesome detail about what humans have done to each other, just to make the history more vivid and to show like the weight of our humanity. She talked about how, in gruesome detail, how we used to skin people alive. Not just used to, but that's just a common occurrence in, humanity, especially during conflicts or wars, to deter others. And as if skinning people alive wasn't bad enough, some Assyrians would even bath prisoners after they've skinned them alive in salt, just so that the skin would burn more. As if skinning people alive isn't horrible enough. The amount of hatred one must feel like for another human being to do such a thing to another is unfathomable. The issue is that from an early age, I could see myself in the position of the person being tortured when I was seeing records of history like that. It was very easy for me to empathize with these things as if they actually happened, because they did. And not just witnessing them in person doesn't mean that they are less true. So from there, it became an existential matter for me. And I developed almost a sort of resentment towards existence and therefore to some sort of God. Even though I didn't believe at God anymore at that time, it was very, very easy to lose faith in the face of such things. But the fact that any power could allow for such things, even if it's just existence or the universe itself, I thought is indefensible. Because it's just the sheer amount of bloodshed and pain that we've gone through, the sheer amount of mourning and sadness. And then to this extent, I also had to come to the conclusion that God must hate its own creation for him to allow such things to happen, or for it to allow such things to happen. I remember thinking that if God was real, he has to be evil, and there's no way to rationalize this away, because nobody has decided to be on this planet and suffer these atrocities. It's the biggest violation of consent. And for what? Now, a crucial aspect of psychological well-being is that of unconditional acceptance. And my last video talked about how true knowledge and acceptance is this symbiotic relationship that you can have to yourself and reality in which you can find deeper peace. But it's so easy to preach love and acceptance and light and unconditional love and consciousness and all of this nice stuff when you're not really confronting the actual fact that you might get tortured or something horrible is going to happen to you. The mere potential of this happening, that reality is capable of doing this, was enough for me to spiral endlessly. So I spiraled for many years, trying to find some way to make sense of a reality that does this to itself without consent. And talking about consent, are you aware that the idea of marital rape wasn't a clear defined thing until the late 20th century, way after the intellectual enlightenment era? Parents used to give their daughters away for marriage when they were around 12 to 14, so they could marry other men. And it was almost like a business transaction. And these men, of course, then would provide for her, and they were legally obligated to care for the person. But the woman then in turn was obligated to sleep with the man and basically do whatever he wants, because he was the man and the provider and he fought for the war. So you're basically his slave and you have no property rights whatsoever. So women were basically property, and all of our modern day idea of personal rights and consent didn't exist at all at this time and age. And if you kind of ponder it, it's just so morally abhorrent from today's standards how we used to live for decades, for centuries and centuries. Most of human history didn't even have the concept of consent in this context. And this is most of our human history. Our entire modern understanding of morality and consent and all of this is completely thrown out the window the moment you look at another historical context. And here again, you can't really fathom the extent of suffering of our human condition. There was also a practice called sati in Hinduism, where widows whose husband died were basically pressured to burn themselves alive so that they would die in honor, as without men they were basically worthless. And why am I talking about all of this stuff? Am I not just bringing down the vibe? Isn't spirituality or psychological work supposed to be peaceful and kind and bring you away from these things? And I find it important to name these states precisely, to talk about these things that most spiritual narratives don't really allow for. How all of it has to be positive and love and light and a beautiful miracle all the time. Because that's just not how people move to spirituality or why people pursue this psychological work in the first place. It always comes from just realizing the sheer horror or the capacity for sheer horror that is within reality. And real acceptance can only come when you look at these experiences from your own eyes, honestly, to not ignore that this is a facet of you, this capacity to experience these things, not to necessarily go through all of it yourself. Everyone has their own burden to carry, but to not ignore how much has happened for us to have the rights that we have right now, for us to have the understanding of morality that we have right now, and to see our shared humanity and what we have endured to be where we are. Because in the face of this extent of suffering, the question of consent becomes quite interesting, because it might be the wrong framing altogether. If everything just exists because it does, and nobody has chosen any of it, then it seems like acceptance is more like a default. And the desire for consent is somewhat of an anomaly. In a world that forces you to experience whatever is the experience of the day, there isn't really a lot of space to choose. We just wake up each day and then move throughout the day and have to experience all of these sensations that happen there. The question is, do you feel like it is being forced upon you from an external force, or do you feel identical to whatever is happening? Is there a sense of self to which these things are happening to? Or do you feel in harmony with whatever is happening to you at any given moment? I realized at some point that this putting myself in these places of other people's suffering in some historical context, or just imagining what it would be like to be burned alive or something horrible like that, this was all a sort of self-flagellation. Like I wasn't allowing myself to be happy because something about my own mind wasn't allowing me to. Like it was saying that in a world in which these things are happening, I am not allowed to be just peaceful, because it would be kind of almost either disrespecting what other people have gone through, or I just be kind of be part of it. And I just couldn't live my life knowing that existence does it to itself without finding like the solution that would make it okay. I was standing in the way of my own personal peace because I explored consciousness into places that weren't actually my own. I was basically fantasizing horrible things happening to me that had no real connection to my own personal life. I wasn't trying to solve my own traumas or trying to understand myself psychologically, but I just was projecting my own fears and my own discontentment with life to the external world and historical facts, and kind of almost proving to myself again and again that this existence is evil. And the truth is, it was all born out of my own personal ego, of my own need for control and power over existence, and to have a reason to never embrace my own life because of the resentment I had for reality as a whole. If everything is horrible anyway, then I have a good reason to never let go into my life. Always keep everyone at arm's length, be cynical about people, and never trust human potential. And overall, just live a life of quick hedonism and comfort and low risk taking, because clearly this life isn't fair, so better not take any risks. As much as everything discussed in this video is true, the fear for existence was born within me, and I needed to go into myself to figure out the answers to the questions that were haunting me. Because of course suffering is horrible, and of course you're not supposed to enjoy it. But the issue is that the mind gets somehow stuck in this mindset that everything is suffering, and wherever it goes, it is concerned about what is going to happen to it or what is going to happen to other people, and it doesn't see a way out. If you're currently feeling the same way and you're noticing that just thinking on your own or watching these videos isn't enough, there's a link in the description where I inform you about how I can help you directly. I do an ego analysis on people where I can give you the clarity to see where your existential knots lie, and where you can actually do deep psychological work with yourself in a way that removes you from all of these obsessive and negative and very dark thoughts. Because there's no way that you can change the past. You have no power over the course of history or the nature of reality. This need to make it somehow okay is just trying to make something that is genuinely bad good. But it's not that the entirety of reality is bad, but there are a lot of pockets, if not infinite pockets, of badness. What you have power over is the potential of your own future. And wishing something, wishing that the future that is in your hands is not possible, wishing to like cease existence somehow, is madness. As long as you're scared of your own potential, you'll always be scared. Because this potential isn't going anywhere. This potential was there before your life and is going to be there after your life. Accepting your reality isn't about curling yourself into a ball of despair for the rest of your life. You might need to do this from time to actually process all of your stuff. But the real question is, can you get up after that? Can you switch the channel? Can you not be stuck in this mode to keep contemplating all of this darkness that isn't your own? I learned that what my ego was doing is that it was hyper obsessed about itself, hyper anxious about what is going to happen to it in the future, never present, because in the present there is some sort of dissolution with whatever you're doing and engaging with. When you're focused in what you are doing in the present moment, there's no time to think about some alternative reality or some old random historical fact. This existential anxiety is a very subtle form of self-obsession, because you put yourself into reality that isn't even yours. You're imagining horrors of the future that aren't yours either, because you're imagining them. The same with remembering bad experiences of the past. There's a certain way of doing this that actually resolves the trauma in a way that is processed. But there's another way of doing it that is just rumination and basically refueling yourself with the negativity of past events. And since these haven't been processed and integrated in an effective way, they still run in your mind, and now they try to protect you for the future. And as much as these defensive mechanisms might have served you for a while because it was too much to handle, they become maladaptive. Because right now, the most likely thing is that there is no active threat. Reality is not out there to get you. And if your active threat is the idea that you're going to die one day, well then, yeah, you will always experience an active threat because it is an inevitability. The same way that all facets of reality are an inevitability. This argument with life is not sensical. And most of the darkness in the world is really a projection of your own mind and your own fears. Not because historical events aren't real or don't matter, they matter a ton, and it contextualizes a lot about the peace that you might have. But they are still a very small lens from infinite possible lenses. The amount of experience that exists far outweigh the deepest pits of hell. There are so many states of consciousness that you can't possibly fathom. And if you've experienced high doses of psychedelics or other esoteric states, you know that no matter what you can come up with, it is nothing in the wide sea of conscious potential. Which, of course, in my case, also this conscious potential was what was deeply terrifying. And I always was kind of stuck in this feeling of fear towards it. But it's the fear of fear itself that perpetuates the fear. Most of the stuff we worry about never actually happens, and therefore most of our pain is self-inflicted. It happens within the mind because the mind gets stuck on something that has already passed. And time is the saving grace. Time is that which accepts everything and then moves on from it. All these negative vibes of this video come because you choose to engage with them, you are interested in them, and it's like part of the soul wants to move through, also through the morbid parts, wants to be able to relate with the darkness of it. So it's not just random that you're looking for things that might be negative. The mind gets the ability to actually move through it and accept it in a novel way, to own a part of yourself that might have been rejected. Because as a human part of the civilization, we are all in this together. And all of the history that has brought us to this year, well, it is our own. And by looking at it soberly, we have the ability to shift and change what comes next on an individual level and on a large-scale societal level. And it always starts with awareness, with the acknowledgement of our shared humanity. Often, what it takes for this acknowledgement is to have swum in some parts of hell, just for a while, so that you realize how real this is and how much even one singular person's experience matters. This self that is experiencing this moment is identical to all other selves who have experienced other moments. There's just this facet of beingness, of experience, that has no clear distinction. This is why we connect so much with the darkness of others when we feel empathy, because we are recognizing ourselves and we're recognizing the need to mend whatever has hurt us. Acceptance, compassion is the default of reality. Math, physics, architectural structures, atoms, experiences, they all just are. The isness of a thing is not something you can argue against. And this is the shift that existential liberation will lead you towards. You will stop the argument with life and find peace within. You can still mourn and feel sad about sad events, but you won't be fighting reality anymore because there's nothing to fight. You only can surrender. And the unhealthy ego prefers to suffer than to surrender. It doesn't want to see how inevitable reality is. It wants to control, and it wants to be somebody specific. And in the suffering, it can construct its own identity and then get stuck there. Looking at this moment right now, to be in contact with truth and sense all your experience, how could it be any way else than what it is? By connecting to your past and by connecting also to the darkness, you'll notice your awareness increasing when you accept. You'll notice how much appreciation can be found in the simplest sensation, how much peace and joy there can be by the simple act of drinking a sip of water. When you move from these fantastical narratives of alternative lifetimes and other experiences and start to be present now, acceptance is all that is happening. So I think over time I'll go darker and darker because I notice that all this love and life spirituality is really just about people suppressing their traumas and not acknowledging the gruesome facts of life. The only way to be whole is if you can look at all facets of our shared humanity and acknowledge even that. You don't need to dwell on it, you don't need to ruminate or swim in it, and you don't need to be it. It's okay to just be you. But if you spend a significant amount of time thinking about things that haven't happened to you, then it's time to let it go and look inward. It's okay to look away from other people's suffering and deal with yourself first. It's okay to also be happy in a world that has the potential for this. You're not supposed to carry the entire world's suffering on your own shoulders because everybody has their own cross to carry. And the more content and happy you find yourself within your own life, the more happy you make all of existence as a whole. Now, if you want professional help, I have the link in the description where you can read the entire program that I can move you through. And if you feel a bit off right now and want a better way to understand why do we exist with more philosophical reasoning, then check this video out next.